For those of you who are regular viewers and listeners to Washington Watch, you know that we generally like to conclude each week with our Biblical Worldview segment to discuss some of the highlights of the news through the lens of Scripture. But this week, with Thanksgiving coming up, we're going to shake things up a little bit from our regular routine, and we're going to bring in our worldview discussion right now. And so joining me for this is David Closson. He's the director of the Center for Biblical Worldview here at the Family Research Council and author of Life After Roe, Equipping Christians in the Fight for Life Today. David, thank you for joining me. Happy Thanksgiving Eve to you.
Happy Thanksgiving to you as well, Jody. Great to be with you.
Likewise. Okay, let's start with this news that just recently came out that the State Department is preparing to classify abortion and gender transition procedures for minors as human rights violations. Now, this is amazing to me. So I couldn't wait to get your take on this from a biblical worldview perspective. Why is this so significant that we are reframing this argument now from merely being a moral issue to now a violation of fundamental human rights?
Yeah, Jody, in recent discussions, you and I have talked about even a little bit of our disappointment in the Trump administration not working quick enough on the chemical abortion issue with the FDA and HHS. But let's give credit where credit is due. And this is a tremendous announcement by the State Department as far as classifying abortion and gender transition surgeries as what they really are, and they're not human rights, and these are these are actually violations of fundamental human rights. You know, when you think about human rights, Jody, we recognize that governments don't actually grant us or give us rights. Governments merely acknowledge, they recognize actual human rights that are inherent in all of us. The United Nations, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 1948, outlines kind of what most of the nations of the world have always understood are what we mean when we refer to human rights. Even in the UN Declaration, Article 3 refers to the right to life being one of these foundational rights. Article 18 talks about the freedom of religion. Even Article 16 talks about how the family is a natural and the most natural and fundamental group. This is what real human rights look like, and not these politicized categories of gender identity or abortion or euthanasia, things that the Biden administration told everyone were actual human rights. So what the Trump administration is doing here, saying that abortion, gender transition, euthanasia, these are actually violations of human rights, this brings moral clarity to the situation that we should be grateful for.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we all know, the State Department's human rights report literally shapes how the U.S. engages with other nations around the world. So what impact is this going to have as we move away from promoting gender ideology and we start moving back toward protecting life and free speech and religious liberties? What kind of impact could this have on global human rights?
Yeah, Jody, I think it's going to have a profound impact on global human rights, because this shift is going to tell the nations of the world that we're actually protecting children, defending conscience rights, standing for the family. These are the foundations of human rights. Jody, I'll never forget one of the neatest experiences I've had in my professional career is going to Guatemala. Was invited to go down there to present on the life issue. The president of Guatemala was declaring his nation as the capital of the Central America pro-life community, and I got to meet the president very briefly, but what he shared to me, and this was during the Biden administration, it was how difficult it was for him to make that decision to declare his nation a pro-life nation. And it was difficult because his nation, it's a poor country, depends on foreign aid funneled through the State Department. He told me, and folks around him told me, under the Biden administration, America's dollars came with expectations that they were going to be more permissive with their abortion laws. They were going to endorse homosexuality and same-sex marriage. And again, his country, a deeply religious country, wanted to reject that, but they felt that tension of how do we deal with a nation, with the United States, that is kind of forcing this on us. And so again, what the Trump administration is now doing through the State Department is saying, we're not going to export this gender ideology or this permissive abortion kind of framework on other nations. And so this is going to allow nations like Guatemala and many others to not have to have that tension between their country's values, often formed by religion, and these ideologies that are often driving American foreign policy. So I think this is going to signal to the kind of the rest of the world America is back on track, understanding where our fundamental human rights come from.
Yeah, I think this is a huge, huge deal, and I think the ramifications are going to be felt globally. So, and David, let me just ask if you would, I'd love to keep you over the break. I've got some more questions for you if you're able to. But let me ask you this question before we get to the break. There's no doubt going to be a lot of critics who would say that this whole approach just politicizes human rights, or that it excludes the LGBTQ issues, that type of thing. So how would you respond to that claim? How should Christians think about what actually constitutes a human right, as you mentioned a little bit earlier, versus just an ideological agenda?
Yeah, I think, Jody, what's important is, again, I would gently say to someone who might have that criticism, you know, human rights aren't just what any political movement wants them to be. A human right, a legitimate human right, is grounded in what it means to be human, not these subjective categories of identity or these ideological trends. And I think we just need to be honest. You know, politicizing gender ideology and abortion, this has never been about actual human rights. And so, again, human rights safeguard universal truths where ideology-driven categories do not. And I think we're not trying to erase anyone's identity here. We're just trying to explain what are fundamental human rights. And again, the nations of the world for 100 years, go back to the UN Charter, have agreed on these things. And so the U.S., I think, is getting back in line with where we have historically been.
Well, thank you. David, if you would, again, just hang on after the break. I've got a couple more questions I'd like to get to. David, thank you so much for sticking around after the break. I appreciate that.
Of course.
All right, I've got another question I wanted to ask you, because I thought this was really clever, a good move. But there's a situation in Alabama where the public libraries there are now going to be moving books that are related to transgenderism and gender ideology and all that sort of stuff. They're going to be moving those from the teen and children sections of the library to the adult sections. And, of course, all of this is coming about as a result of a vote that was held there in Alabama. And the board is saying it's doing this to put parents back in control of what their children have access to. Now, from a biblical worldview, why is this parental rights issue, this framing, as moving books so that they're in the adult section where they can now determine what their children see? How important is this?
Yeah, it's really important, Jody, because Scripture is clear that parents, not the state, not activists, not bureaucrats, have the primary discipleship and moral forming responsibilities for their children. And I think it's just really important for us to maintain that when schools or libraries introduce some of these radical ideas, specifically about gender and sexuality, without parental oversight, what they're actually fundamentally doing really is undermining God-given authority to parents. Deuteronomy 6 is kind of the proof text where parents are given this discipleship responsibility. So again, credit where credit is due. The folks who've made this decision in Alabama deserve to be praised because this is good and this is honoring the way God has ordained institutions of authority.
Yeah, I thought it was such a brilliant way of dealing with this issue because the charge is censoring. You're taking all the books out. You're censoring. So let me ask you this, and let you respond to this: is protecting children from ideological content the same as censorship?
No. Fundamentally, no, Jody. And because, and even as you mentioned in this decision, the books are simply being taken to a different shelf, to the adult section. Think about children. I have a child who next week is going to turn 1 year old, so maybe I'm extra sensitive to this right now, Jody. But you think about children. They are impressionable. And they deserve age-appropriate material. And these radical ideas of gender ideology, and some of these books, Jody, we've talked about this, even the Supreme Court and the Mahmoud decision out of Montgomery County, Maryland, where parents are objecting to some of these curriculum. Some of these books are written towards pre-kindergarten age children. This is entirely inappropriate. And so, again, I'm not calling for book bans or censorship. Whenever you hear someone claiming that conservatives are for book bans, we're not. Book bans, you can still find these books on Amazon, and in this library you can still find them in the adult section. It's just simply saying the content of some of these books is inappropriate for young children, and again, parents ought to be the ones making the decision for what their children, what is age appropriate for them to engage in.
All right, so you bring up an interesting part of this whole discussion. Of course, this decision, as I understand it, is affecting over 200 libraries there in Alabama. But this comes in the midst of a broader national debate over youth access, children access to all this gender identity content, as you just mentioned. So what does this time in our history reveal about the broader cultural clash over what you just said, the definition of what is appropriate for children? And how should the church right now engage wisely in this whole conversation of what is appropriate and what's not?
Yeah, Jody, this shows that our culture is deeply divided over something as fundamental as really the meaning of childhood. One side believes that children should be shielded from some of this material and really formed and discipled by their parents. The other side believes that children should have unmediated access to some of these adult ideological debates that we're having. And I think it's important for the church to respond with clarity and compassion. Again, we're not trying to be mean towards anybody, but the church is an institution that recognizes the authority that parents have. And for Christian parents in particular that are called to disciple and form the immoral imagination of their children, again, decisions like the one coming out of Alabama that we're talking about, this is good. It ought to be emulated across the country. And again, Ephesians 4:15, we speak the truth in love, and it is loving to protect our children from some of this divisive material that is driven by these harmful anti-Bible, anti-biblical ideologies.
Absolutely. Well, David, one final question as we're about to enter into Thanksgiving. Anything that you would like to say that you're thankful for, or that you would like to close out in the next 30 seconds or so?
Absolutely. Think about the opportunities so many of us are going to have sitting around the Thanksgiving table with friends and family, especially those who might disagree with us. My encouragement, again, speak the truth in love. Going into these conversations, have some scripture at the ready. Romans 3:23, Romans 6:23, John 3:16, maybe John 14:6. Prepare yourself for some of these conversations that might come up to, again, speak the truth in love with your family. Great opportunity to do that at Thanksgiving.
David Closson, Director of the Center for Biblical Worldview here at FRC, thank you so much. Happy Thanksgiving to you.